Uh, Finance Committee of the Whole will come back to order. And is anybody from the juvenile court still here? Oh, okay. Okay. Uh, Ms. Lippman.
Yes.
I was getting conflicting information here at the table and then out in the hallway during the fire drill as to whether the $2,850,000 and the $500,000 for the shelter care program that Judge Sweeney requested, whether that money is already included in the proposal for the 2015 update that we received from fiscal office, or whether it is an additional request. Can you clarify that?
Sure. You can never trust that fire drill information. So you got to be careful. If you turn in the booklet that you got earlier today on page Roman numeral 4, 6, and 7, the box that's at the top of page 6 does not have any of the money that we talked about that's requested. It's actually listed in the box on page Roman numeral 4, 7, and that's where you'll see the $500,000 for the detention overtime, the $500,000 for that shelter pilot project, and the 285 that we are requesting for residential services. But those numbers on page Roman numeral 4, 7 are not listed in the box that's on the top of Roman numeral 4, 6.
So what you're saying then is that the requests that Judge Sweeney made are not included in the budget as currently proposed. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they're not in that top part. They are requests that are listed on the as budget requests for 2015.
I'm having a hard time with that because the director's proposal listed the exact same three items and a total 3.9 million, which is the exact same number that you have here. I find it hard to believe that you're asking for an additional amount in the exact same amount. It doesn't add up. Director, can you help us?
Yes, the $3.9 million that juvenile court is requesting is it's on page 4-7. That is over and above the 2015 budget update amount, which at this point is, as you can see, it is, $18.2 million. So the schedule or the box at the top, it's blank under requests because we're only intending to show you approved requests that get added to the recommended budget. So at this point, without a recommendation by council, the budget for juvenile court will remain at $18.2 million. If the council so moves, all of it or a portion of this $3.9 million, which again is on page 4-7, that will be added to the budget if there is council will to do so.
Well, Director, if that's the case, then on this document here, the 2015 budget update overview, on page 6, it says, it's a summary of the 2015 budget update, and you listed an item under juvenile court that said $3.9 million, detention center, OT, shelter pilot, and placement contracts, these exact same items. If these items are not listed are not actually in the budget, why was it listed here?
The $3.9 million was added to the budget. All right, to cover detention center OT, shelter pilot and placements. This is above that request. This is an additional.
They're the exact same thing. Are you telling me that they just so happen to ask for additional funding in the same amounts that you added?
Well, that does look strange. Let me go back and let me confer with the staff, and I'll address that when I come back.
Okay,
What I can tell you is in the court's meetings with the Office of Budget and Management staff, is these were the only items that were above what was in the previously approved 15 budget. So these were things that were above that, what was approved back in 14. So what it sounds like to me is that, you know, maybe some of the documentation has the numbers mixed up, but the court and Office of Budget and Management are in agreement that these are the numbers that the court needs.
okay.
If that makes sense, regardless of what each graph says.
Okay.
We only need the money once.
Right. Well, what we're trying to find out is whether that money is already submitted in the document that we're working with, or whether it
Okay.
would require an amendment by council. So we're working on that. And in the meantime, I believe Ms. Conwell had a question.
Through the chair, yes. And the judge is gone, but she talked about the pilot secure immediate shelter fund, and I know we haven't established what is the impact in this budget, but I was just wondering if this would, whether we've put the money in already or we're going to put the money in, would this show us any savings? Because she talked about taking the court-involved youth into another arena and out of the detention center. That should bring down our costs, shouldn't it?
We always hesitate when we talk about savings. First and foremost, it's actually going to be the best placement for these youth because of the type of youth that we have in the detention center, that we have youth that have less serious crimes, that need a secure place to stay that's more than a staff secure, which is our current shelter care. But in theory, you can say that, well, if you're taking these youth out of the secure detention center and putting them here, that you'll have less youth in the secure detention center. But it's hard to say with fluctuations in population, with the makeup of the youth that are there, and with the fluctuation even in the staffing, if you will really see that savings. That is what we're hoping to see, is you'll have youth that are better placed and that your overtime costs will go down. That's what we hope to see.
And was there, through the chair, was there a number, I think that you said, the number of children that's in the detention center?
Well, as of today, because obviously it changes all the time, I believe there's like 163.
So just going with that number of 163, if we're taking some of those, my concern is if you're taking some of those youth out of the detention center and you're putting them in this other type of housing because they don't need that secure of a, you could actually go over your budget if you're not staying at a certain number, saying that whether this goes through or not, and they're putting the kids in the detention, in a less secure detention center, you have to stay at a certain number that you're staying with, or that'll grow, that'll be a new expense, and then we'll have the detention center
Well,
grow.
the shelter pilot will have a maximum number of beds,
Okay.
as opposed to our secure detention center, which has a maximum number of beds, but if those youth continue to show up, we need to find a place for them. So, you know, where, for example, we have only one pod that houses girls. If we have more girls that need to stay in secure detention than well, then that pot has beds, we have to find room for those girls
In the current detention.
in the current facility.
So to me, and we're not sure if this money has already been attributed or not, you could actually increase your budget. It could still go up because you need to have two different facilities for two different type of individual children.
Well, the number
One
of
that-
youth, while it fluctuates from day to day,
I get that.
will be what it is. And
That's the 163.
as of today.
As of
Tomorrow,
today.
it could be 183.
But as of
Or it could be
today-
143.
As of today, you don't have that other type of housing.
Correct. So today, if we had those, let's say, 10 beds, I don't even know if we even know how many beds it's going to be, maybe the population to detention would be 153. But then 20 kids can show up and be admitted tonight.
I get that. I guess my concern is, if we only have the detention center as of today, and we accommodate with the $500,000 additional for this project, you're actually opening up more costs, because you have the detention center that could house up to 160 some, and then you're having this less appropriated type housing.
So we're not anticipating that this is going to actually widen the door like we
And
talked about.
that's what I'm trying to
Right. We're
get
not,
at.
we're not anticipating that at all. And the judges, like Judge Sweeney had stated, have done a really good job of only having kids in detention center that actually need to be there. So like she talked about, when you sort of looked at the numbers just from today and you counted out your youth that are there for bindovers, there are youth that are there that are over the age of 18 that normally wouldn't even be at our detention center. You have 19 or 20 youth that were waiting for a residential site and whatever else. When you took all of those pieces and parts out of that 163 number, you only had 97 kids that were in the detention center, which is lower than the 120 that were budgeted for. So we're not looking that if we had that today and we had 10 beds instead of 163, we'd have 173.
Yes.
We're not looking at that at all. But I think the piece that's most important to think about is that one of sort of the rules of juvenile justice is that you don't want to place a lower risk youth with a higher risk youth. And because we have so many youth that are adults, that are bindovers, that are there for very, very serious offenses, that when you have youth with lesser offenses, and you just don't want to mix them in together, but they may need a facility that is a locked facility for them. So this will allow those youth to be in a more appropriate placement, which then, which all the research shows will lead to lower recidivism in the future. Because they won't be with the higher risk youth, which then tends to lead youth to become more serious offenders.
And this, I take it, was not foreseen when they were building the juvenile court
Well, with
system?
Senate Bill 337, no, we did not, because like Judge Sweeney had stated, previously, all of those youth that were bindovers, all those youth that turned 18, while they still were county expenses, they weren't juvenile court expenses, because we just sent them down to the jail. But now, based on that law, we are not permitted to do that. They must stay in the juvenile detention facility. Even if their case is being heard at general division, they have to stay at the detention center until their case comes to a completion, which is much, much longer than the juvenile court cases.
Okay. Director, do you have an answer for us? Good. The question is whether the $3.9 million for the detention center OT, the shelter pilot, and the placement contracts, whether that money is already reflected in Resolution 2014-0267, or would it require a council amendment?
Thank you, Councilman. Actually, I've found out I have a couple of errors on the presentation from last week. The juvenile court request and the prosecutor's request are not reflected in the budget. Those are actually decision package requests that are not in the base at this point. So if you're looking at my presentation document from page 6 of the presentation document, juvenile court and the prosecutor requests under 2015 budget requests should be redacted.
Okay, well,
I apologize.
those are very important things and worth our time spent today to get that clarified. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. We will consider your request. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We really need to move on because time is short and there's a lot else going on in county council and I don't think people are going to be receptive to additional meetings.
Mr.
We're going
Chair.
to call, yes.
One quick question, just on this juvenile court, the budget updates, the on page IV6, 1.471, is that looks like an increase in request. Is that included in the budget?
What page are you on?
On Roman numeral 4-6. So the budget 2015 budget updates, that 1471,
Yes,
that's included already in the numbers?
that's included
Those are
already.
included.
Those are that's the 2015 impact of operations from 2014 or decisions made in 2014. So yes, the 1.47 is in the budget, but the corresponding requests on page 4-7 are not.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, so what is the actual request for juvenile court then?
The request.
At the bottom line.
The request for juvenile court is the $3.9 million.
Requesting 3.9 million additional funding for 2015 that's not included in the proposed update.
Right.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to information technology. Ms. Daptovich is going to give us a brief presentation on the ERP project.
Good afternoon. My name is Debbie Daftovich. I work for Jeff Mowry, and I am currently working on the ERP project. I have a very quick presentation for you today. For those of you who don't know what ERP is, and let me start there. The ERP system is really, traditionally, ERP, the term goes back about 30 years, but it basically is a series of modules that enables various departments to collaborate and work together. So we are seeking an ERP system to replace our payroll system, our old famous system, which is about 30 years old, our budgeting system, our general accounting, facilities, grant management, series of applications, which are listed here on the next page, including our treasury, as I mentioned, procurement, fixed assets, public works, and inventory. We're going from a system where we have multiple silos that don't talk to one another. They're distributed. There's a lot of paper that's passed around. There's a lot of manual entry and duplication of effort into various systems. And we have significant resources and contracts that we have to take in order to sustain those systems. And it's really an inefficient model. We're looking to standardize our business processes, move out an ERP system, develop a center of excellence, and focus on really enhanced analytics, which would have helped you today, I'm sure, in the budget process, to be able to drill down and see where a lot of these dollars are, and really enhance experience for the end user as well as the public, more transparency. This next slide just kind of shows, traditionally we had all these different silos, traditional ERP suite, what that's made up of, and kind of what we're looking to go towards. General timeline of where we're at, the Transition Advisory Group actually recommended that we implement an ERP system in 2011. During that year, we did a lot of consolidation. We consolidated the fiscal office, HR, information technology, and public works. In 2012, We continued with that organization consolidation. We benchmarked a lot of our legacy systems, and we brought in a consultant from Eaton to help us with the review. In 2013, we hired a consultant to come on board to help us gather all of the specifications for a new ERP system. We also talked to other local governments. We published a request for information, which received a number of responses back, which helped us develop an RFP that we published in 2014. And as well as last year, council authorized the budget for that item. In 2015 to date, we have narrowed down, I should step back. These are all the organizations that we interviewed. We gathered over 3,000 individual specifications for functional specifications. And we interviewed staff, and we got 14 responses back from our RFP. 9 of those 14 responses met the technical threshold to go to the next level. And during the month of December, we will be bringing back 9 of these vendors in for a Q&A session. And as a result of that Q&A session of the 9 vendors, we hope to narrow it down to 3 or more vendors that we will bring in for in-depth technical demonstrations. And during those technical demonstrations, we will be inviting county staff who perform a lot of those functions to sit in on the deep dives, ask questions, and help us make a determination on a final award that we hope to do in 2015.
Can you narrow down the timing any more than sometime in 2015?
Well, like I said, in the month of December, we're going to have the 2-hour sessions. The people that we have on the ERP committee, we've got the director of HR, we've got the fiscal officer, we've got the county treasurer, the director of public works or their designees. Scheduling those deep dives, we plan on at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on what we're going to ask them to demonstrate. So scheduling those out, we anticipate that's going to take us at least several months, probably through at least first quarter of 2015.
And I would just make everybody aware that there's $25 million in the proposed bond issue, which you're considering tomorrow for the ERP project. So it's a major and long overdue undertaking. Councilman Schran.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The starred vendors on here, did the third-party advisor map up the RFP with the responses to make sure that these folks all complied? Is that how they got on this list, I said?
Yes, and in order to...
That was not an internal decision, that was the external firm?
Actually, the external consultant does not do any scoring or any.
Okay.
They just kind of oversee the process. How we made that determination was, like I said, we had over 3,000 functional requirements. Based on how the vendor responded to those, they were awarded a score from 0 to 5, whether the proposed solution could be met out of the box via a configuration, via a customization, via third party, or not supported at all. So based on the collection of those, that scoring, and then the scoring on the individual written responses, they were awarded a certain point level. And the point level in order to proceed to the next step was a minimum of 65 points, and those 4 vendors did not achieve that threshold.
Okay, and the $25 million is for start to finish on this project? Is that for procurement of software and hardware?
That would
Is that
be-
for training and education, implementation, data transfer, everything?
Everything, yes. Yes, we did ask for it is a 5-year implementation, or 5-year contract, with a 2-year implementation. That does include hardware, software, professional services, the whole 9 yards.
And the 2 years is measured from the date in which we select the vendor?
Correct. The date that we have a project kickoff to the point that, we begin actually using the product. So we do anticipate this to be a phased approach. We want to phase in HR and Public Works are identified to go first because they need a work order management system, as well as we want to develop, our chart of accounts and begin some finance work.
Because this will probably be one of the biggest things we do in the county.
It's huge.
It'll be bigger than, it'll touch every part. When you say 2 years from go live, is that actual go live, or is that, when you say using it, does that mean that our training starts at that point? Or
It-
is that
2 years is
going
a-
live for a customer?
Yeah, 2 years is a very aggressive
It's
schedule.
unbelievably aggressive.
Very, very aggressive. It is very aggressive schedule. That's to the point that we put in the RFP that we would like to begin using the software in a production environment. Now, we could be using it in a production environment while we are parallel with other processes. So that's kind of a nebulous term sometimes, what go live means, but we would like an accelerated schedule on this and to move as quickly as possible.
Okay, because I just think that that's, you loaded the software sometime in 2015? I just,
No, I'm sorry.
Okay,
We
you
would
just-
we're hoping to kick, that assumes we get contract negotiations completed and everything, but assuming that the vendor came on board end of 2015, we would be ready end of 2017
So
to
that's
start
lo-
using a product.
So load the software in 2016, do all your data points sometime in 2017, and train our workforce when?
Yeah, that is an aggressive schedule. It is a
Yeah.
very, very, very aggressive schedule.
Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but that's, I would really be cautious of our county taking that kind of pace, because we saw what happened when sometimes software gets pushed
Right.
faster than when it can get there.
I agree.
Because you're also probably going to run, you have to make a critical decision, do we run on a parallel path, or do you run a hard stop and you go to the new system, and those are all,
Yeah, I
Those are all-
imagine we're going to have to run parallel for a while.
which dual entry and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I would be shocked if we were for 2 years live. And not that I don't appreciate the enthusiasm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you
All right.
very much.
Thank you.
Please take Councilman Schwann's advice to heart. He knows what he's talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Prosecuting attorney.
Good afternoon. Tim McGinney, County Prosecutor.
And Mr. Prosecutors, sorry for the little delay. We got our
problem.
schedule bumped a little bit when we had that fire drill.
We heard
so-
that,
Okay,
yes.
so I
Madam President,
apologize.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate your support and the support announced by the Safety Committee when we presented the Sexual Assault Initiative Completion Program based on the emergencies outlined at the committee. Most of you were here at that committee hearing, and we outlined the need to investigate rapidly the DNA hits that are coming forward through the Attorney General's testing of these rape kits that were on Cleveland Police shelves, and that they are uncovering rapists and serial rapists at a very high rate. We anticipate 1,000 indictments to result from these 4,000 kits. We are a little better than 20% completed, and we need additional investigators to cut the lag time between the time they're identified and the time we arrest and prosecute them. As we saw from the 104th Street Lake Avenue attack, they will strike as soon as they're out of prison and available to rape again. So the shorter the period between the identification of the individual and their arrest and prosecution, the fewer the unnecessary victims of rape and other assaults. We saw from the evaluation of the first 200, the 20%, that they caused approximately in the 20 years, up to 20 years of criminal history, and all of them have criminal records because they're been to the penitentiary, that they have caused an estimated $500 million of economic damage to the community as based on the National Institute of Health figures. So that's just the economic cost. The real cost is these ladies who were raped in the far more severe cost is the ladies who were raped at 104th and in Lakewood by these individuals. So they're known offenders, rapists, attackers, and we want to get them off the street as soon as possible. We think that this emergency expenditure above our budget's flat, but this is an additional request for approximately $600,000 per year. This, for 2 years, this will take us, take a year off the completion rate, and we will have these individuals arrested and prosecuted all the sooner. And we do apologize for the cost we're costing at juvenile court also for our initiatives there with our RICO indictments and bringing these gangs in. They're also and it's an unintended cost, and it rolls over to juvenile court, but the benefit will greatly exceed the cost, because these are dangerous individuals, and they're involved in homicides and a great deal of gang violence. We do not want to be put in a position of Chicago or other cities who have large gang violent attacks, and the people, of course, are victimized.
Director Murray? We held a hearing on this earlier this fall, and kind of gave the green light that we thought this was important. I'm wondering why this was not included in the budget as proposed.
We did not, well, first of all, there was no formal appropriation increase. At the time, our recommendation was, let's see what the impact, let's have the prosecutor hire the investigators, see what the impact will be, and then we would make a correction to the appropriation when we could gauge the impact. So that was our initial recommendation to council.
Okay. To the prosecutor, have the investigators in fact been hired yet?
Partially, I'd ask Rick Bell, who is directing the project, to address that. You can tell us.
We've identified 5 people to hire immediately. They've all been hired and provided the notice to start. 3 of those 5 started last week. 2 more will start within the next week and a half. We are attempting to identify 3 more. We have about 150 applicants, some of them that are worthy with the experience, and we're waiting for the best. We want to round out the 8 with a strong final 3. And we also have the witness advocate position that is part of this request. Those interviews are taking place this week, tomorrow, and the following day.
Okay. I don't think there's any question that we believe these positions should be sustained throughout 2015 and 2016 to complete what you have in mind. The only question is whether we're going to feel the need to amend this budget at this time, or whether we're going to wait and see whether capacity develops or whether it needs to be amended later. And so we're going to have to decide that before we wrap up this process. Questions by my colleagues for the prosecutor's office?
Mr. Chair, I don't have one. I have one in between the next 2.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Okay, we're behind you. We appreciate, and you know, we've seen some stuff in the newspaper lately about how what we're doing in Cuyahoga County compared with several other cities, and from my reading like that, it looked like we were doing better than anybody else, and so we appreciate that effort, and we want to keep it that way.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate your recognition of that. We appear to be the lead in the country right now, and the DA Vance in Manhattan just threw $35 million at his to complete in New York, which is and he noted our program as a confirmation of that it'll work, it's necessary, and it'll be cost effective in the long run. This will, just from a monetary viewpoint, this will pay off very strongly.
Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prosecutor, you know we
Yes.
just approved a $50 million demolition fund through this council. you have roughly 2.5 million in demo dollars. Can you speak a little bit to where those are in your budget and
Well,
how
we
you
have,
see that
actually, what we could
work?
spend is 2.1, and we have offered those to the city of Cleveland for two specific areas to spend. Immediately south of the clinic, between the new juvenile court building and Quincy and Cedar. We've identified an area we want to concentrate the demolitions. And on the west side, parallel to West 25th and the Metro Hospital, between the freeways, so to speak, 71 and 90, but closer to 71, the north end, we again want to, we're aiming at 125 demolitions in each area on the theory that if you concentrate the demolitions, and you have community partners like those two hospitals that have committed to build on some of the land near their, so that they're invested in their community for employees, you know, in housing, and use their police forces that they have that are authorized, and we've given them a written opinion that it can come off their campuses and patrol the areas where they own property, we will see a drastic reduction in crime in those small zones. We are using it for an experiment. We want to show, and we are complete supporters of this demolition, that if you knock down all the houses in an area, or a great number of the houses, you'll have dramatic results. If you just scatter, do a few here and there, the results will be negligible. They won't be even, there'll be a blip on the screen. And so we've picked some ideal conditions. We're working with Cleveland to have that done. We're hoping to also do bulk buying on the theory that with greater numbers, you'll get greater bargains on the demolition. It just makes economic sense that we can bring the cost down from 12,000 to maybe 8,500 is our goal, and we'll see if we can achieve that.
You said bulk buying, you want to, another hire a vendor, contract with a vendor to
Do
demo in
many
bulk?
instead of one at a time. The city and the land bank do one at a time. They pick their vendor, they tell them what to do, they pay about a standard price. We think we can bring the price way down and say, here's 50 properties or 100 properties, bid on them. And you do them. And we'll give you the, we'll have the properties ready to go, and you promise to get them done in this many days, pay a penalty if you don't. But if you do, then you get paid for knocking down 50 at a lower price. If they're doing, there's economy to scale. If they're doing, I witnessed it on the Seymour Avenue event with the Castro case. There's great bureaucracy slowing the system down. If we're going to do a $50 million, we're going to knock down $8,000 houses, we got to get a better and more efficient system.
That's $2.1 million for 2015.
We're hoping to be 2.2 by the time they actually take it, but that we hope will pay for 125 in each section. That'd be 250 homes we want to knock down. Abandoned, derelict homes, eyesores ready for demolition, none of them savable or rehabilitatable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Demolition or on something else?
Just a quick question about the demo he's
We
prosecutor speaking
we
about.
really got to focus on the budget.
Absolutely,
If it can
but-
be a quick yes or no kind of
Will
question.
any of that be used for commercial at all, or no? In those areas, only
But
for
we have
residential?
no preference how it's used. It's used wisely, you know.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful if it's used for commercial also.
Good enough.
Okay, Councilman, thank you very much. Councilman Greenspan.
Great, this is a policy decision. I don't see the executive or Matt Carroll here, so I guess next in command would be Mark Parks, who I did see here. If Mark could come forward, I'd ask a question about the budget. Something that's just becoming a little more apparent as we're going through this. So it appears that the general fund, we're looking at a $4.3 million surplus. If I go through and look at the budget, and I quickly did this, it looks like there are additional requests in 2015 for roughly 5.3 million, 4 million being the juvenile court, 600 from the prosecutor, and then the next largest be the PRC, another 600,000, which would then, if these items were all adopted, would put us in a loss situation, because that would be about 5.3 million. What's the administration, what's the executive's recommendation on these recommendations that are before us? Because I see recommendations from these agencies, but I don't see them as to what the executive wants to do. What does he want to do with these? Does he want to approve these? Does he? Because I got to tell you, rape kits are important to support the prosecutor. Juvenile court has some major issues. But the silence and absence of any guidance from the administration leads us to believe that and no forethought into how the funding gap would be met leads us to believe that he's not in support of these items. Is that the case?
Well, I'm not through the chair to Councilman Greenspan, I'm not going to express the executive's position on these because I haven't spoke to him directly about these. But the 5.6 million that you're talking about is something, if you look at the history of the fiscal office or the Office of Budget and Management, we tend to overperform in budgeting. So if there is a situation where there's a deficit, and that's not an extremely large deficit, we should be able to proactively work to get down to that number, to come in at a number that is below and a balanced budget at the end of the year.
But that's not what's being presented. What's being presented now is a budget with a $4.3 million general fund
Right.
with 5.3 roughly $1 million worth of additional requests. So
Right.
I don't know what the executive wants us to do. This is his budget.
Right.
Does he support these activities or not? And if so, then how operationally and fiscally do you balance the budget with requests in excess of the profit?
Right, through the chair to Councilman Greenspan again, if you think about the budget that was adopted for 2014, the budget was presented as balanced prior to some of the additional items that were added to it, which put it in a similar situation. And again, we are outperforming that and we're coming in balance. So once we get the absolute direction from the executive, we'll do what we need to do to make sure that we have a balanced budget.
So we have no direction then from the executive on these items.
As I speak to you today, right now, I do not have that.
So is it left up to this body to determine how to spend these dollars if that's without his, we can't compel him to perform. We saw that when we approved the hiring of additional social workers 3 years ago, and it took 2 years to hire them. So if we approve the rape kits and the executive doesn't view it as a worthy objective, then we may wait a year or two for that funding to be dispersed.
Through the chair to Councilman Greenspan, certainly we could get an answer quicker than that. And again, if this is, if it's put into the position where it needs to be funded, we will make sure that it's funded. And it wouldn't be a year down the line.
To Councilman Greenspan, if we give the money to juvenile court and we give the money to the prosecutor's office, they're separate agencies. I think we can rely upon them to spend the money for the purposes that they've requested. And we will confer both with the executive and the executive-elect to get their guidance, and we will combine that with our wisdom, and we'll make a decision on these items.
Very good. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have senior and adult. And the main question we had for you is that we know that your office recently completed a strategic plan. And the question is whether you have new initiatives in mind because of that strategic plan. And are those new initiatives included in this budget proposal, or are there things that you need that are not included?
Good afternoon. I am Tracy Mason, I'm Administrator for Senior and Adult Services. So I did put together a PowerPoint presentation because I thought it was important to give a little bit of background information because I recognize that we have a new county council person that has joined us.
Time is too short for a general presentation.
Okay.
We would like it to be very brief and focus on the questions. I'm sorry, but
Okay,
we don't want
so-
this to run late into the evening.
So here we are. So we have 4 goals that came with a new mission statement and vision statement that's very important to us and the work that we do to serve seniors and adults with disabilities throughout Cuyahoga County. We identified 4 primary service areas. One of them is to create programmatic centers of excellence to foster collaboration and best practices. So I have identified areas that we needed to concentrate on. And to do that, we wanted to make sure we employ best practices in the work that we do. We also wanted to make sure that we totally revamped our assessment tools so we can make sure we're capturing the full needs of the community that we serve. As many of you know, we have also redesigned our intake system where we are now receiving all of our phone calls through one centralized process, and our slogan is "One Call Does It All." We have in 2014 received allocation of $500,000 to employ a case management database system that will replace multiple standalone systems. And so with that, that will also provide that needed support to identify outcomes as it relates to the best practices that we have identified. For 2015, we have identified additional costs that will need to be allocated for us to carry out some of the work around Goal 1, and that is roughly around $20,000. But we also recognize that we have these resources within our budget, so we are able to reallocate some of the funds within our current budget cycle to meet the needs of Goal 1. Goal 2 is raise the public profile to multiple audience. I recognize that out in the community, we needed to rebrand ourselves so people know who we are and what we do. And so we have launched an initiative to do that. And also during that process, we created a senior service network collaborative that's a reflection of Cuyahoga County who provides senior programming throughout their respective communities. And to do this work, we are projecting for 2015, $50,000 to purchase RTA and billboard ads as well as direct mail campaign so we can continue to let the community know about the work that we do. And again, this is another area that we feel that we've been able to allocate through current resources. Goal 3, establish a leadership role in the community. We have been working with various community partners throughout the community to identify priorities that need our time and attention. Most of you have heard quite a bit around adult protective services, and so we have geared ourselves to be considered the leader as it relates to APS. And in this area, there was collectively, gaps in services needed to be addressed that focus around transportation, behavioral health, as well as housing. And so we have, again, identified $100,000 that we feel that will be necessary to do work in this area. But again, we've been able to decertify some of our existing contracts, so we will have the capacity to accomplish some of the goals that we've identified in our strategic plan. And this is just an example of the advocacy alert that we've created as we have expanded on our advocacy efforts. Goal 4, strengthening funding capacity and service delivery. We feel, even though we're government, that we have to be responsible to the dollars that we have allocated within our budget. Also, we wanted to be sure that there was some consistency amongst programs and services, internal eligibility, as well as contracts that we administer throughout the community for senior programming. In this area, we want to allocate $75,000 to conduct an assessment of our current practice and application as it relates to Medicaid and Medicare. And again, we've been able to identify the dollars that is needed to carry out these 4 goals in our current strategic plan. What's more important, we need to make sure we're building a community that's equipped and ready to handle the silver tsunami that's coming. I tried to really quick.
You did very well, and strategic planning at its best. You use the information you obtain to reorder your own priorities, and and choose what's most important and do it within your existing priorities. So we commend you for that. Any questions for senior and adult? Okay, thank you very much. But Councilman Jones got in under the wire.
Yeah, one question. There is a senior outreach services in my district, East 79th and Quincy roughly. It's former Langston Hughes facility. That facility closed down. The building obviously is still there, but new services are being provided by, I believe, the McGregor
Yes.
Foundation. Okay. Had a few residents who called in. They're getting services from other locations now. Do we provide contracting opportunities, or is there money in your budget that is going to McGregor House now, similar as was going to senior outreach services? And do you plan, or do you measure what they're doing in the community when you direct dollars towards them?
We do not have an existing contract with McGregor Foundation or McGregor PACE program, actually is what's housed there. So the dollars that was allocated to senior outreach services, we are able to redistribute those dollars to other surrounding senior organizations like Eliza Bryant, as well as Golden Age Centers, to make sure that that community is still served.
Is it more because they're new and they haven't had opportunity, or do you think their model will not encourage them to come to the county?
I believe majority of their funding is through Medicaid funding, so they have not come to us in terms of any support.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. And next we have Office of HHS. And I want to ask in particular about two things, to talk a little bit about the second year on Pay for Success, and for an update on how close we are to launching that program, and also about the children with medical handicaps. I'd like you to explain a little bit better what the role is between the state and the county on that program, and how come we have these increased costs and don't seem to have much control over it. So those are my two questions.
Very good. First, good afternoon, David Merriman, Deputy Chief of Staff for Health and Human Services. I'll try to be as brief and as effective as Tracy, but she did a great job, and so I'm following on a good presentation. I think the first question is the second year on Pay for Success, what the intentions are, and what we are looking to do. As you're very well aware, this council approved the appropriation, transferring the first round of funding from the HHS levy into the SIF. I think the final action that we need to do is certify those funds. Next year, we'll transfer another $1 million out of the Health and Human Service levy into the SIF fund, and that will continue for 5 years, assuming the project continues. So briefly, that's the position that we're in right now. As to the second question, how close are we on the project? We do have a lender that is reviewing the project, and I'm not in a position to say who they are at this time, but they are taking the project to their lender review committee next week, and our hope is that we'll have some feedback from them quickly following that. And with the completion of that step, we will have our senior lender and are in a position to move forward. So that's our status on Pay for Success. Would you like me to pause there, or would you like me to explain the children with...
Children.
Sure.
Okay.
So there is an Ohio Revised Code section that requires that each county make payments up to, I believe it's $1 million for children with special medical handicaps. Historically, that amount has been around $1 million. For reasons that are not quite clear to us this year, there has been more billing for that service to us. And we are investigating why that's the case, but this is a requirement, a state requirement that we make. Oh, thank you, Rick. This is a state requirement that we have these funds available, that we are responsible to respond to requests. And as the staff at Job and Family Services do, they're tracking the increases, and this is one of a few areas where we've actually seen more families applying for these funds. I'd be happy to review the. In essence, historically, we've spent around $2.9 million, where CJFS. Paid about 1.1 million of it. So this year, our maximum reimbursement for 2014 is again 2.9 million, but that's the amount that we're obliged to pay by ORC, and we were budgeted for 1.4. And moving forward, we need to increase that budget amount and be prepared to pay out the full amount.
Okay, so 2.9 should be the maximum.
It is, yes.
Okay. Questions by my colleagues? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is the Law Department. And I have two focus questions. And the first is that there's a couple $100,000 of additional personnel expenses factored into the budget, so I'd like to hear about that. And the second thing is I want to hear something about the implementation of the Law Department prosecutor agreement. I don't get the sense that the coordination is working ideally, because both offices seem to still be growing, and so those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Mujib Makhlouf, Law Director. Let me address actually the second question quickly, and then I'll go more into the first question. Actually, the coordination seems to be happening very well. I can't speak for the prosecutor's office in terms of how, for their staffing or, but if you remember when we had the agreement with the prosecutor's office, I thought that the area where we could have the biggest duplication of services, unnecessary services, was this idea of consulting lawyers, that on any matter that the Law Department handles, the prosecutor's office could have consulting lawyers or vice versa. And actually, we haven't had that on a single matter since the agreement went into place. So we're doing the matters that we're doing, they're doing the matters that they're doing. The only area where we have it sometimes is in the transactional matters with Greg Huth from the prosecutor's office, because of the history having handled a lot of the bond work or some of that, and the history of involvement with the convention center. So sometimes you'll have lawyers from the Law Department and Greg Huth, but generally speaking, we've been doing our work and they've been doing their work. There hasn't been the kind of duplication of work. Now, in terms of the Law Department's work, it is, and I'm now veering toward the first question. I'll sort of give. It is a significant amount of work that we've assumed that we continue doing. To give you an example, we have the electronic intake system, and I think we handle. I ran the statistics. We handle anywhere. Now it's bottoming down to where it's leveling. Anywhere between 200 to 300 matters, new matters coming into the Law Department on a monthly basis. We've had a spike in May. We had 597 matters come in. In June, we had 423 matters. It went down to 280, 206, went back to 280. So it fluctuates up and down, but I think the safe average is anywhere between 200 and 300 matters every month that come into the Law Department. And those matters can vary. I'm sorry?
10 a day.
10 a day. It's a significant, we've used that analogy in the law department. We're almost like Lucy and Ethel at the chocolate factory, where it just keeps coming in, it keeps coming in, it keeps coming in, and it does feel like that sometimes in the sense of the volume. Challenges that we've had, and it's been in the transactional area and the contracting area, but part of it is technology. I don't think people realize what we have to go through on some of the technological issues that we have. So let's say you're putting a contract, you're using the law department to negotiate a contract. You come to the law department in the matrix system, they do the negotiations for you, you have the contract approved. Then the department puts it in matrix, in Novus. If there is a problem with that contract, the lawyer has to send it back to the department. The department doesn't have the ability to upload the revised contract in Novus. And then somehow that works out and it's approved in Novus. Then the law department has to go into a third system on OnBase to approve that. So there are huge inefficiencies because of technology that we have. And the hope is once the new OnBase system comes on board, that the matter comes directly into the law department. It stays with the same person. You have the entire history of the revisions, what happened to the contract, things of that nature, that can create a lot of efficiencies. But our biggest challenge continues, and the most humbling experience has been the contracting and management of the contracting and the volume of contracting work that comes in. The dispute with the prosecutor's office was over litigation. It's the contracting that we just can't keep up with because of the significant volume that happens. We're a $1.3 billion entity, $600 million worth of contracting a year. All of that contract comes through. It's a significant, and when you have one-time major contracts that do eat a lot of time, like the Emergency Operations Center, doing the construction contract for that, the Metro Health Annex at the jail, the Cleveland Jail Agreement, the pedestrian bridge, some of the convention center work, the hotel, council has seen a number of those contracts that do take a significant amount of time, and you're doing those contracts that take a significant amount of time while you're still handling all the little matters that are coming through and having to allocate, time for this Novus approval process, which is very time consuming. In terms of the new hires that we've made in the law department, there are two new assistant law directors, an additional lawyer that we hired for transactional work with knowledge in the area of IT. That was an area that we wanted some knowledge of. We always get these clauses, limitations of liability, source codes, IT. So we needed to make sure that we have that capacity, and to fill the capacity, we're way short staff on it, but also the area of expertise in that capacity. The other lawyer was actually the Division of Children and Family Services, had made the case that they are a very substantial, large client with very unique needs at times that are not shared by the remainder of the county, and they wanted a lawyer who would be primarily stationed at DCFS, at least who would, in some ways, I very much reject the idea of a jack of all trades in one department, but the idea is that lawyer would be able at least to handle the initial matters, coordinate with the other lawyers in the law department and when there are areas of expertise that are needed. And the idea for that position is that we will charge it back to DCFS, so it will be subject to the federal reimbursement for that position. So those are the two additional lawyers. On contracting, obviously we've had the intake system, the matrix system that we've implemented. And the other thing is we always used to be an administrative hassle whenever you have court reporters or experts, or you're sending them back to the individual. So let's say we would be handling a matter for the Public Works Department. We're doing the work, we're getting the court reporter, but then we're sending the billing to the Public Works Department to pay for the court report. It was taking a lot of administrative time unnecessarily. So that's where we worked with OBM to try to put that money in the law department on the matters within the executive agencies that we're handling. So every time we need a court reporter, we're not going back and it becomes an entire administrative process. How do we pay for a court reporter or things of that nature? On the litigation, we only actually have 3 lawyers who are full-time litigators, and what we do is we try to team them up with the subject experts in the matter in the law department. So let's say if it's a labor employment litigation, like, counsel is familiar with some of the cases like the Dolezal case, you have the litigators like Robin Wilson, but then we would team them up with Ed Morales or somebody of that nature from within the law department. If it's a contracting litigation, you have the litigator, but a member from the transactional group with them. So that's in a nutshell. I hope I answered both questions.
Okay, we're open to questions and starting with Councilman Tron.
And to pick up on the chairman's query about the staff, I mean, anytime you get to a law firm, you can always look and say, I just don't have that skill set, and so should I go out and hire it? I mean, you can make that rationale every time you're missing a skill set. But I thought that one of the things that we established early on, that if there was a gap, we weren't always going to go out and hire that. We were going to go out and look at a third party and bring them in as an advisor. Like IT, just to use your example, I mean, that is such a specialized area and it changes all the time. And to profess that we're going to have somebody stay up to speed at what we could contract out for, it just seems to me that with every law firm, every time you have a gap, we could be rationalizing on that. And it just seems to me that stuff like that, when you get into these specialized areas, you're better off just to be hiring that piece of advice for the transaction as opposed to trying to bring it in-house.
No, you're absolutely right. I would just qualify that with two respects. One is we had additional need, and when we were hiring for transactional lawyers, and when we hired a transactional lawyer, we wanted somebody with that skill set in it. But IT, actually, we can very much we do a significant amount of IT contracting in the county. And if we were to send every one of those outside, the budget for outside counsel would be literally in the millions. I mean, it would not, that's not a metaphorical statement. That's a real number if we were to send all of the IT work outside. And that's why we at least, as much of it as we can handle in-house with, obviously, if you get into a very sophisticated contract or something, but most of what we can handle in-house, we prefer to do it in-house. When we have that specialized need, we definitely go outside. And yeah, it doesn't make sense to hire a lawyer and pay them, for the very, very, very sophisticated transactions. But the day-to-day operations that we handle, we do significant amount of IT. To just farm that out would be just cost prohibitive.
Well, I know that you were here for the testimony from the IT department, and I guess that's one area that I would really hope that we don't try to do the IT contract on a review of our ERP package as to its impact for this county, because there's probably not a more specialized piece of business than that one right there. And that we do get somebody who's been skilled in negotiating ERP packages. When you're talking about going against 9 of these, and you're looking at Oracle and some of these folks, I mean, those are the big boys, and they really know how to write an IT contract. And if we don't have somebody on the other side that I would be afraid that we're trying to.
And you've seen it, for instance, we have the skill sets on real estate, but when we needed to go out on real estate, we go out on real estate. When we've needed to go on construction, we have the skill sets. We did the emergency operations center ourselves, but we didn't do the hotel ourselves. So we do the analysis on a case-by-case basis in terms of what do we have inside, what we need to go outside, and then we absolutely go outside when we need to. I understand the complexity of the ERP. That's a very huge, and the implications of that. I mean, the long term.
Right.
How much of the, 25 million is the value of that contract. The real impact on the county is.
We'll make the 25 million look very small in
disappear.
relationship, right?
No, I get that.
And so I'm cautious, and I appreciate the chairman waving a red flag, because as departments tend to grow, then they never get smaller. And all of a sudden, the expertise is there, and it's not just for transactions. It becomes an integral part of it. And all you got to do is go look at the big firms down here, and they have every one of those disciplines in-house, but the smaller firms don't.
No, I fully get that. I just, the outside counsel can be a very expensive. We try to use it when we need it, but it can be very expensive. It's something to use them on all IT or things of that. There is a significant amount that we can do in-house. I mean, I give you an example. Highland Software does all of their the contracting in-house. Now, obviously, they've probably worked with outside counsel to prepare the templates from which they're working, and that's sort of what we're trying to do. But they even do sometimes mergers and acquisitions in-house, depending on the size of it, the complexity. So you could do, and that's the model that's moving nationally, where a lot of the companies are doing a lot more and more in-house and using outside counsel less. It's happening in the private sector significantly because it happened. Firms are pricing themselves out of the market at some point, that companies are deciding to, when they do the cost-benefit analysis, it's much better to hire in-house. If you look at the in-house law departments of any company, they're growing exponentially and the idea is they're using less and less. I don't know how long but that trend, you see it happening all over the country in the private sector, not just in the government sector. You have no idea how much I've resisted hiring outside and just trying to make the apps, because I was never 100% sure that we have the, all the efficiencies in place that we need, something like the Nova, how much human time do we waste between the Novus and OnBase and, keep hoping for creating efficiencies in other ways. The technology, the entire matrix system is intended to create efficiencies so that we use less, we use the lawyers for doing legal work instead of, chasing the right person to call and who to do things of that nature. So we've been very, very cautious in the law department in terms of going judiciously and exactly where we need it. The one item, it's in the narrative that I just wanted to make sure to bring to council's attention, is the law department growth, but the one area where we've had is the structure of the law department being very flat, in the sense all the lawyers are assistant law directors, and then you have just the law director. We've had the need and need to have practice group leaders. Obviously, you're going to have new leadership, but the idea, even if we internally within the law department grow into practice group leaders for an intermediate managerial level for that department to be able to operate effectively, that is something that we really need. It doesn't make sense for an individual person like the law director to review every single lawyer in the law department, to approve the timesheets for every individual lawyer. We need intermediate management levels, which we do not have in the law department right now. I think that's costed, if we do the promotions internally, I think it was about $27,000 plus the benefits, about $31,000 that's in the narrative that they've submitted to.
Is that included in the budget as proposed?
It's not in the budget, it's an item for, obviously we have no control. There is a new administration coming in, so in terms of how you do all of that stuff, they'll have to be cleared by them, but it's an item that's been very much on my mind. Whoever comes in next needs to handle this issue, because you need some intermediate level management in that department.
Okay. Nothing else? Thank you very
That's
much.
it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Glenn Coyne, Planning Commission, and I see you have the summary on the housing study scope of work. If you could tell us about that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very, very brief. And in response to the discussions about the demolition bond funding, the County Planning Commission was asked. Oh, thank you very much. Was asked to put together an outline or a scope for what a housing policy or a study would look like for the county. So we did that. I think that's been distributed. You should have a copy of that in front of you. So again, this is in line with what we're looking at countywide. We're working on economic development. We're looking at other regional assets like stormwater, open space, connectivity, and this is just one more layer in what would be our attempt to put together a countywide plan. So it fits exactly with our charge. We would look to use some partners on this. There's some really good work coming out of Cleveland State. There's some other groups. Of course, the data from the land bank would be very important, and many, many other sources. So we're asking then, in response to putting together this outline, for additional resources for us to be able to do that in 2015, which we didn't anticipate
And
as we thought about our budget.
Is the $150,000, is that the amount of additional resources that
correct,
would be
Mr. Chairman.
necessary?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions by my colleagues? Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Okay. And last but certainly not least, because without employees, this county could not function, we come to the Personnel Review Commission.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Happy to wind this up. So we have a PowerPoint, but I think in the interest of time, you all have hard copies of it. I'll just skip through the really important points here. we're here today before you with budget requests to support two of our initiatives that we identified through our strategic planning process that we began in 2013. This really is, these two initiatives are the enhanced employment, civil service testing, if you will, and classification and compensation administration. Two bodies of work that are relatively new to us. They have been being done by the Department of Human Resources as they were part of responsibilities that the PRC delegated to the HR department before the staff was in place. And as you know, our main priority was to focus on those pending appeals. We have addressed nearly all of those 240 appeals, so we're moving forward to fulfill our obligations as we understand them under the charter. We are requesting basically two things: additional staff and some technology and some equipment to conduct this testing. Our plan is to acquire some unique competencies that are not currently in place at the county and some expertise in test development and class and comp administration. I'll talk in a minute about where this work is being done currently. I don't want to go into length about that because that really is the HR director's purview, but I can give you some insights into what we understand is happening currently and how we think we can improve upon it. One of the goals that we have in mind is to continually evaluate our operations as we go forward. So please know that as we make these requests, we are keeping an open mind to this. Some of this work has not been done to the extent that we want to do it, that we think we need to do it in order to fulfill our requirements. So I expect that this is still, an evolutional process in nature as we still are relatively new under the new charter. Our current levels of staffing, as you can see on page 3 of this handout, really, we're very happy that you supported our request for funding for 2 employment testing specialists. We have continued to investigate and learn more about that operation and how it's happening. So we are before you asking for funding for an additional 2, so a total of 4 employment testing specialists. This represents work that is being done by some 20 to 25 different people across the HR department's operations as it spans the county's operation. So again, this is our best effort to estimate what we think we're going to need, but I think 4 is going to put us in a position to be very responsive to the county's needs, at least as we've identified them so far. The additional positions, a manager of classification and compensation, and then again 2 specialists to work for that person. These new roles, let me talk for a minute about that. The testing specialists, as we talked about when we first presented this to you, these are the people who are going to design, validate, and administer the tests. The director of the manager of classification and compensation, this is a person that we're going to be looking to direct the short and the long-term strategies to ensure that these systems remain relevant and that they're effective. We have some concerns about what we know now about the classification plan. I think you're going to hear some of that in the pay equity study results that come before you in the next several weeks. So our goal is to ensure that those things are actually working to support the goals of the county's administration, actually. And then the class and comp specialists, we expect are going to be the people who are going to research, write, and modify some of the class plan elements and the comp plan elements. As I mentioned, the testing, we know that this is happening to some extent in the HR department. They're also using the hiring managers and assistant managers or deputy directors in some cases to help them write tests, administer tests. That work is all stuff that we think that we're going to be undertaking with this new staffing structure. In the classification and compensation realm, the recruitment and retention team, and really the recruitment and retention manager, has a large portion of that role is dedicated to the management of the classification and compensation system. And also, obviously, there has been an ongoing relationship with the Archer Company for a number of years because they have consistently been helpful in helping the county complete that work, actually. With the testing operations, what we're looking to do is to maximize the use of the facility where we are currently housed. As I think most of you are aware that we are now at the Viaduct building. And, excuse me, we're trying to use it as efficiently as we can. We would very much like to establish there a testing lab so that we can conduct paper and pencil tests and computerized tests all at the same place, and to also use that space for our commission public meetings that happen every 2 weeks. So that's part of our overall vision for that operation. We also are looking to hopefully develop the capacity to be able to anticipate the vacancies. One of the things that we've learned in talking with the directors across the administration is that people are waiting a long time to hire. We know that the HR department has established time to hire as one of its efficiency measures, and they've worked to reduce it to a point that I think the average now that they're looking at is 2 to 3 months. Well, you know, if the average is 2 to 3 months, that there's still positions that are going several months to get that to be the average. And we think that that's something we can really help to address and improve, especially with the use of technology. So what you have before you is a request for some capital outlays that include the ability for us to set up a testing lab there with technology that would allow us to do computerized assessment of computer skills, clerical skills, administrative and financial skills. So we know that a good body of the positions that we would be testing for include components of work of that nature. So we think that that's a really effective tool that we can use to help speed up the hiring process and increase the efficiencies in the process. We have a couple of statistical packages on there that are necessary for us to be able to do the kind of analysis that are required to ensure that the tests are valid and reliable, which are key components of any employment testing program. And then we've asked for funding for computers, monitors, and some tables that will allow us to fold the monitors down and use the same space for paper and pencil tests. So I've put some specificity in there to the capital outlay piece of that was not in what came to you from OBM. We also know that other operating costs are in there because we are going to have maintenance contracts for some of the software if we're allowed to purchase it. So that's basically the short story of what we're asking for from council today.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you please just list the individual items and how much? Could you give me a rundown?
Sure. They're on page 5 here.
That's the capital outlays.
That's the capital outlays,
But
right.
but what about the rest of the items?
The staffing?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, hold on just a second. We're looking to bring on a manager, and just so you know, we've researched these, so we have a pretty good sense of what these positions are likely to cost us. We have a manager position of classification and compensation. We're expecting that to be in the realm of $80,000. We have 2 additional employment testing specialists. We're in the process of getting ready to extend offers, so I feel like I'm showing my hand a little bit, but we're thinking 60 to 62 for all of those specialists positions.
That's for each.
Right.
And you have a total of,
And we have we're asking for a total of 4. And then that figure that's included here includes the 31 or 32% for benefits as well.
so these numbers include the benefits?
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And the two testing specialists that we approved, have their salaries been folded into the 2015 budget, or do we need funding for them?
Yes, they have been. They were rolled into it, yes, going
So-
forward.
so-
So that's why it was increased up to
But-
882, I think.
But you're asking for a total of 4 more?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
And the classification and compensation positions, are you in agreement with the Human Resources Department that you should perform those functions, or is that an area that's still in dispute?
No, it's not in dispute. We are engaged in conversations about that transition currently, so there is no dispute. We're moving forward collaboratively, I would add.
And in terms of how much new money would be required, what's the total of all the items?
635, I think.
Six-
And
635.
635, and 462 of that is recurring.
635, 432 recurring.
462.
462.
Correct.
Okay, 62 recurring. Okay. Questions? Councilman Greenspan.
Just kind of a general question, trying to understand, the administration, I'm just thinking about compensation, I'm thinking about employees. So the administration makes recommendations for compensation adjustments for its own departments. But for your area, who makes those recommendations? I'm not,
For
for COLA, for For any, who would make that recommendation?
What has happened is I have recommended to the commission to make changes, and we've maintained consistency with what the executive has done, because, part of the commission's goal has been to ensure consistency and standardization, so that's been important to them. So that's the process that follows.
And do we know, does your body have authority over non-executive related agencies to ensure salary compliance?
I would say to you that that's a matter of interpretation. I think it's something that the commission still is looking at, trying to figure out what its role is really supposed to be. And if I could digress for just a second, the other thing that I think is intriguing is one of the things that we're hoping to accomplish with this testing lab is that we may be able to meet some regionalized need for this. We did receive a call last week from another county agency outside of the administration asking whether or not we could conduct a test for them. We think that there's some possibility to expand that, but I know this is a little different from what you were asking, but we're excited about the possibility of that.
Thank you.
Ms. Kuczynski, I sort of put this together, but could you just prepare us a spreadsheet listing the whole thing and in one place and get it to us?
Absolutely. We
Okay.
can do that tomorrow.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilman Sean.
Is the ultimate result of the testing to save us some money and to bring the testing closer to the need for that particular department?
I think what our goal is to really look at increasing efficiencies by standardizing this and centralizing it. Right now, if the Department of Public Works wants to hire an administrative assistant one, they do that. They go through that process independently. HHS does it their own. We're looking to find some efficiencies there. I think we really have an opportunity to do this much more quickly and much more efficiently, especially if we can use technology to do it.
And when you get down to specific components within Public Works, for example, are they going to be bringing in content that's going to relate to the testing that they're going to be asking for their application, for their candidate?
The way that we see this happening is that we believe that we can find tests that work for the administrative assistant role, and then they would be able to use their interview questions subsequent to that test to get at the unique qualifications that they might need for that position.
And the tests are going to be off-the-shelf tests bought from a third party, or are we going to try and create the
We're
content?
going to try and create them when we can. We just went through this ourselves because we decided to move forward to conduct a test for our own administrative assistant. We wrote it, we administered it, we're scoring it.
At the risk of sounding hypocritical, then the law department is going to review the content of the quality of the test from.
No, that's why we're hiring professionals to do
Oh,
it.
okay, so
Yeah,
that is going to be jobbed out. All the
Right,
good.
right.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Director? Do you anticipate there being technical corrections, and if so, can you get them to us by a week from today, so we have them ahead of the next committee meeting?
You will have them on Monday.
Great. Okay, thank you. So this concludes the hearing of the departments. Are there any departments or agencies that are requesting changes that have not already done so? Most of such requests we heard in the course of the presentations. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Rick Warner from the Office of Health and Human Services. Pursuant to the discussions that OBM started a few weeks ago in advance of this hearing and your consideration of changes to the 2015 budget, I have asked the various parts of Human Services to put together their potential requests over and above what's already in their 2015 budget. I have received those from most of the departments. I have begun the conversation with OBM. First of all, I apologize that it's coming in after this process today. They are not significant increases, I don't believe, and right now we're working to figure out if there is enough underspending in the existing budgets in 2014, that we would be able to shift some funding to fund these additional requests if they're approved by the administration and by council. There are also a couple of requests to begin some new programmatic opportunities that I feel we need to brief the incoming county executive before we could come forward and make a request to county council or even to OBM. So there are probably two tiers of potential changes or potential requests that if I had the opportunity to, that you just accorded to Ms. Kopczynski to put together a spreadsheet for you. Obviously, that is also something that would have to go through OBM and the administration, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that there were a few other, again, relatively minor requests that would be coming forward.
How soon would you anticipate getting that to us?
I think that we could have it to you, recognizing that we first need to finish the conversations with OBM and the executive's office by this Friday, I would think.
Okay, we will look for those.
Great. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Okay, well, that will conclude this hearing on the budget update resolution. By way of miscellaneous business, I would remind everybody that Finance and Budget Committee meets tomorrow at 3 p.m. with the focus of attention being on the bond resolutions that are that we're working on, and also the next meeting of the Committee of the Whole on the budget will be on Tuesday, December 2nd at 3 p.m. We're going to allow everybody to have a happy Thanksgiving week, and we will come back at that time, and at that time we're going to need to consider what amendments we're going to make to this resolution and hopefully move it on to the full council for passage on December 9th. Any other miscellaneous business? Okay, has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, everybody.